Hey Zach, what's your favourite video game series?
Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Video Games. In this episode we're going to be delving into 2001's amazing first-person shooter Halo Combat Evolved. Yes. What? What are you saying?
I like the series. I like the series fine enough. Although I personally don't have much experience with the original.
Isn't good
Halo.
enough in this video.
No.
You have to be an Uber fan.
Am I not permitted to are we lacking the credentials here? You've clearly brought enough.
You might be. So, as a fan of the series, you played a little bit. What are your thoughts looking back at Halo 1 and I suppose the broader sense of the Halo universe?
Well, I didn't really get into the universe until much later on, around 3, but my experiences of 1 are just playing the local multiplayer around a friend's house on this weird, big, clunky, black and green console with a controller
with a CTR TV and that sort of thing.
CTR TV and a controller which my poor 7-year-old hands...
A controller, man.
which... I couldn't grip, and the buttons
were playing Halo. Go away.
the buttons were like, it was the size of like, people joke about the Wii U gamepad being bad. Like this is awful. But anyway, back to Halo. I enjoyed it enough, but I never got time to properly deep dive into it. Later on, when I played it more frequently on 3, I actually started getting into the universe of it a bit more and started looking back at some of the backstory and realizing. It is a shooter, but it does have a fairly detailed backstory behind it, because at the time I always assumed that a first-person shooter is like a self-contained element. It's it's like your Call of Duties. This was pre-Modern Warfare as well, back when it's its own individual story. But I'd say going to the universe later on, probably with ODST and Reach, I actually peaked in my involvement in the community. I look back on 1 more so now as I don't want to say a relic, but I want to say an observation point.
It's like when you look in the history of first-person shooters, you have Doom, the id series, let's say, then GoldenEye maybe, and then the next one will be Half-Life, and then maybe Counter-Strike, and then Halo is another benchmark. It's really a benchmark for the console shooters anyway. Yeah. You talk about the story. If you look at we've got some of the books here, but there's another that stack and a half more. So just for about a 15-hour campaign initially to then. That's incredible. So
they definitely got a good starting point for the universe.
What really captured my imagination was the Covenant. So you have this really interesting antagonist that's just a hodgepodge of different alien races, which I thought was very different to what I'd seen before. So you get the grunts being ordered around, and of course, do you remember the birthday grunt skull?
Oh yeah,
headshot, and they go
of course I do.
That was really cool. And then of course the elites, your standard enemy. Of the silver ones is crazy hard with invisible energy swords. I mean, just to see all those different dynamics within the game, based on one, for example, the elites, based on one race, to have the different health, the different weapons, the different traits for them is really just makes the gameplay just that much more dynamic. And then of course you go on to eventually the brutes in the later games, and in this game you actually had the prophets come in, and they were this sort of mysterious. Sort of Council of Elders, which you expect to see in sort of a medieval game. So it's really interesting to see them in a space universe merge all these different genres of the first-person shooter together.
When I was going through the story, I realised, okay, this seems like the typical, humans versus. I got almost StarCrafty-ish vibes, all the typical, humans or aliens sort of vibe, until the Flood came in.
That was a huge reveal, wasn't it?
Honestly, that brought me straight back and realised, okay, there's there's a third one into this. That's when I draw the big StarCraft comparison, because you've obviously got the 3 different races. And in this, the 3 different races.
That was probably a big influence for them. I haven't read anything to do with that, but you would imagine so, wouldn't you?
Definitely so. Definitely.
The thing with the Flood as well, yes, they come in at that point and you think, oh, damn, as a character, you're screwed. But when they start then infecting the Covenant and even to a wider scale, that whole Halo ring becomes infested with Flood. Obviously, that's the...
Yeah.
I mean, from the backstory, it's really interesting that the Halo ring was designed to destroy the Flood, and yet they're so powerful that they've inhabited this incredible weapon. And then not only do you know that you're in danger, the Covenant's in danger, but the whole universe is in danger. And then within those few missions, so up until I think the library, you're sort of, okay, the Flood are against me, I'm a bit scared of this. But after that, you think, wow, okay, this is bigger than even the Master Chief in this instance.
Yeah, it does a good job of scaling. It does, the whole game, I think, does a good job of scaling and just introducing yourself to the bigger picture.
Another point with knowing that you've got all these different races in the Covenant, this is quite a sad point, but this is why I own all the backstory to the universe, is that the actual politics of the Covenant interest me, which is, like, obviously, as I said, you've got the Grunts Reload down who have no say. You've got the Prophets who are on this, as I say, the great journey, and then everyone just follows, but eventually in the later games we get into this civil war between them, and that's really interesting because not only is, again, that's taking things that we know from different genres, so from like Call of Duty you might get political conflict, putting it in this space genre, so it's really a hodgepodge of these things, and it never leaves you bored. I don't think the story does.
I really think that the first game in general, you talk about, things being quite a hodgepodge. I tend to think of like Halo as the original as like a hodgepodge of so many different varieties of game, which have all been put in succinctly. That's
really helped by the map variety. So you first of all, in the Pillar of Autumn, this really corridor shooter, which you kind of expect from, like, especially because Rainbow came out a few years before, so you kind of expect that. And then all of a sudden you're in this like green plains of the Halo ring. And then not long after that, or the mission after, you're in the Covenant warship. Again, a corridor thing, but different in that sense because you're on their turf. So you think to yourself that the map has been designed to impede you rather than help you in the first mission. And not long after that, you're inside of the Halo ring and yet more corridors, but again, different. And then you're in the snow part. So it really is like 4 different games in one. I remember having this folklore around it, so you'd have like people, unfortunately I never had this, but I heard of like the people going around for LAN parties and stuff and bringing their Xboxes with them, and that created a real buzz around the community. Only those who played Halo, didn't really go wider than that, and that really helped with pushing up the game's popularity, because of course I heard of that and I thought, wow, if this game is enough to bring like people together who don't necessarily know each other to play this, and then of course like you spread the word as a Halo fan to other people, and that just really built the momentum of it, which was a really interesting dynamic for me, just from having the LAN in that game. It's a real shame they didn't have the multiplayer, because I think they planned it, but the Xbox didn't have the compatibility for it, so it's a shame.
You said how the game built up a bit of buzz. Now I think that's obviously due to the fervent fan community which has been going on, but yeah, who buys the books and the action figures or the dolls.
What? Action figures. Everyone has action figures. Not toys, Jack.
They're action figures. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about Machinima for a second, and how unbelievably pivotal I really think this has been. Obviously, the big one, which is still going to this day, is Red versus Blue.
Still going? I had no idea.
Still to this day.
I have to watch. I'll catch up a lot of years on that.
They're on season 15. I stopped watching after season 8, but 1 through 5 is like the golden ones.
We'll binge it.
Oh god, yeah. That sort of like humble fan beginnings. Eventually, let's say if this property was owned by Nintendo, and it's like, no, DMCA, fuck out of that, But I think this maker of those videos, like, he eventually found out Microsoft knew about them.
Okay.
They got a call from Microsoft and said, yeah, just keep doing it. We're not bothered by it.
Yeah, it's marketing.
And, eventually they ended up, marketing Red versus Blue, like characters in the thing appear in the game. So it's nice seeing that real strength of the community in there, and seeing that, fan relations back to them, And that sort of obviously spawned a whole subgenre of like content creation on YouTube, which we didn't realize, unlike it is now, where YouTube is like every big game comes out and gets a Let's Play, or every small indie game,
even they do now.
Yeah, or how like the Five Nights at Freddy's, Undertale, Slender Effect, where it gets popular because of Let's Player does it. This predates that sort of thing by more than 12, 13 years. So it's really interesting seeing it be a forerunner in. Nice. It's interesting seeing it be a forerunner in something that is so commonplace today. So I give it mad props.
So how have we gone this far and not mentioned the Master Chief, Sergeant Johnson, Cortana, and the rest of that amazing cast.
The cast is one thing that has been surprisingly developed. I mean, it's not like, been absolutely dissected to hell because, Master Chief is a faceless space marine.
He's basically the Doom guy. It's really interesting when it was released because it's in the time where like Half-Life 2's got this alternate hero scientist, sort of nerdy Gordon Freeman guy. You've got this stealthy sort of first person coming out with the Rainbow series and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like that big space guy had passed. That time was over and people got bored of it essentially. But even more props to them for having that in there. But I think the main thing is they made him have a personality. Especially with Cortana in there.
Yeah, Cortana's probably my favourite character in the series.
Oh, really?
I'd say so. Oh, the Arbiter's close. I've always found Master Chief to be like, the Boy Scout of the universe, which I don't normally tend to gravitate towards those characters. I like the ones with I enjoyed Cortana's eventual descent into mad. Like I've still followed up with the plot of the games generally. I enjoy Cortana, and I enjoy that they have a relationship which is sort of believable.
I think it is. Even though you never imagine the AI superhuman relationship, I think they do a super job with it.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't exactly say the supporting cast is fantastic, but I think...
Whoa. Sergeant Johnson.
Okay.
Sergeant Avery Johnson.
Okay, fair enough. I do like him.
Shut up, maggot.
I'd say they have the core. They have the core right. For a successful franchise, you only need Mario, Luigi, Peach, or Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Cranky Kong. They've got the toys. They've got
pretty much. Yeah, Prophet of Truth. I think Miranda Keyes is a big one as well, especially after Lieutenant Keyes dies. Spoilers if you haven't played. Yeah, the Arbiter, of course, and I think they confined it well because obviously in a universe that big, you can have infinite number of characters. Really, you could have every general of every Covenant troop being in a character, but they didn't. They made sure it was a couple of the prophets that you really knew about, the Arbiter, and in Halo 3 the Brutes obviously took effect there, so then they brought in another character there, but really there's not a great deal to occupy your mind, which is good because at the end of the day this is just a first person shooter which at its core is a lot of fun and fast paced.
I think that when it comes to character, they made the world itself have a character which made up for it. Obviously, when you're fighting elites, they come charging straight towards you because obviously they're not afraid. Or, but when you kill like I said, a bunch of elites, the grunts panic.
Yeah,
because that's it, and the grunts just try and mercilessly.
They just have no idea what to do.
Exactly. Yeah, that's all the personality I need. And now looking back on it, it's a lot more rewarding than having dudes having dudes to shoot. Guys with a shotgun.
Well, it's a lot more than that. So we're sort of going on to what makes the first-person shooter great, really, in this respect, and how it's changed it. And one of the things is just how intelligent the AI is. Because I know you said that the elites go towards you at some points, but I think it's much more complex than that because they'll use the terrain, like the boulders and things, in their favour, and because of the variety of weapons they have, it creates a new challenge every time.
There's one thing I really want to actually say about that. I think this game's got a philosophy that's really in common with Doom, and it's to do with the enemy variety. Mm-hmm. I just mentioned that they went to the effort of not just having a guy who has one gun, a guy who has a sniper rifle. They've given each of the individual enemies a certain attack pattern and a certain habit. The grunts just have absolutely no idea they're cannon fodder, but they'll try and gang up on you. And the elites are either going to have a gun, or in later games they're going to have the sword,
or invisible, because that's fair.
Or invisible games
with the sword.
And there's enemies with shields as well.
Yeah.
So that means that you have different ways to get around. So rather than just shove loads of enemies in there, you can have a decent mix of them in there. Which
I noticed. Sorry to interrupt. What I noticed with the recent Doom is that you had a fairly set map structure, but what made it different was the different ratios of enemies that they put in
that's
is exactly what this does.
Yeah, they don't need to vary it up. They don't need to throw hundreds of or dozens of different sorts of enemies or ridiculous amounts of terrain. All they have to do is just vary the amount, and they have to vary the proportion as well. So you end up with that sort of that prioritization order, which I think really, really gives a bit of meat to the gameplay rather than just it turning into just an on-rails solution.
I think adding to that, the fact that they only include a lot of these things aren't necessarily Bungie weren't necessarily the first people to put these things in, but they were the first to really collate these mechanics. So one of them is the 2-weapon loadout, and so having that simplification actually makes the firefights a lot harder because you can't call on a rocket launcher every time that you see a pack of grunts or whatever. So it really is interesting that obviously the go-to thing is the plasma pistol and the magnum, because you literally can't. You can literally. That's how to play legendary for me. That's how I get through it.
I forgot how overpowered that pistol was.
And they brought it back eventually. They got rid of it for a couple of games, but they brought it back eventually.
Good. It just doesn't work. How's a pistol the best game open in the game?
Not only that, is that they simplified the controls, because obviously in a PC there's so many keys that you can hotkey for different things. But in here you've got a controller with a set amount of...
You have a console.
You have a console this big and a controller this big. With the controller has a set amount of buttons, clearly.
Yeah.
And so you have to really refine what you're putting in the game. So Master Chief doesn't, at this point, he doesn't have lots of different abilities. He just has a flashlight, a melee, an offhand grenade, which is really good, because having the 2-weapon loadout means that you have to have the grenade on a different button. So you have to have the offhand one rather than going through it on your reticle to go and pick the grenade up and then throw it. Having it just as a quick access is really good.
I think that obviously I'm much more of a fan of, like, you know, give me 20 weapons and the access to have any of them sort of thing. But when you are designing a console shooter, you need to sort of realise that navigation for that's going to be a nightmare. I mean, like, I don't know if you played the Half-Life 2 port for PlayStation. It's not the best way of sighting to weapons.
Definitely PC.
Rather than when you could just hotkey, you know, the number pad.
And of course, playing on console, you clearly don't have access to keyboard and mouse, and having that shield generator mechanic, obviously not the first game to do it, but the first game to put it into this context. And so having that gives you a lot more freedom, because you're on a PC, you can. I think it's considerably easier to go through Halo in that respect. And then whereas on console, I mean, especially with the shield generator on PC, whereas on console you actually need the shield generator to get through it, because you just don't have that same feel.
I think that these like little tweaks really helped out, because obviously the only real shooter like people would have played on console before was GoldenEye. Now, GoldenEye has not aged well. No. It's
still a hell of a game if you were to reverse back to that time. I'll give you a bit of a preview now. So I've had a quick look at the Wikipedia to see the history of first-person shooters. So essentially, in the context of its release, as you said, it predates COD, it predates Battlefield. But it predates COD and Battlefield when they were just these warfare shooters. They weren't going for massive multiplayer things. They were just things. So we're predating those sort of campaign ones. It was released, I personally think it was released at a time when the FPS was in its ascendancy, obviously on console, but especially in the sense that it was diversifying its genres. So you weren't just having this...
Yeah.
So I've mentioned previously that you've got this sort of espionage version of it, especially in like your Splinter Cell and to an extent your Rainbow games as well that were coming out. So those Tom Clancy ones were giving it a real different perspective, rather than just your Doom, like run incredibly quickly at the enemy and shoot a shotgun.
We had the id games beforehand, which had
a
really, really solid framework, which was fantastic. We had Quake, which messed around with the environment and the sort of team.
A little bit, yeah.
And the team aspect of it, obviously, still an id game, and still had the tropes of it.
After that, Duke Nukem as well, which played around with not necessarily the mechanics, but the story of it. There was really adult themes in there, which then took it on a different direction. And then we had Half-Life, of course, which is for me the epitome of where the first-person shooter was on PC before it came to console.
I still think like this game does what it did more than anything else was just having the mass market console, because obviously it was engineered, it was constructed from the ground up for this purpose, because why else would it release on Microsoft's flagship console? Well,
the thing you say that, but it started out it started out as an RTS, and so what the team originally worked on a game called Myth. I think it's called I got it written down here, the Fallen Lords, Myth of Fallen Lords. And then so that was successful. Then the team went on to make Myth 2, but a subsection of that team went on to make The Secret Project, which is of course Halo as we know it now. And they were working with an engine that was better than the Quake engine at the time. And so what that allowed them to do, it allowed them to go into a third-person perspective of a character in an RTS. And so that's what was shown off at the Macworld Symposium. So this, I know Mac.
Okay, let's just imagine the alternate universe where Halo was a Mac.
An RTS on Mac.
No, let's say about the same impact, and people will say Windows, or you can't. It's a crap platform. You can't. Everyone knows there's no games on Windows.
Maybe Halo could have swapped Windows and Mac in a language.
That's an alternate universe.
But there is a slight irony in that it was on Mac and PS2 and PC. That's what it was ready to ship for, and then all of a sudden Microsoft come in with a bulldozer and just go, nope. Microsoft, Xbox, and PC, and we're done. The thing is, though, it worked. I'd never owned a PS2.
No, it did. I mean, we talk about killer apps now, like Breath of the Wild is like the killer app, or even back like earlier times when like this is going to be the Wii's game. Super Mario Galaxy is like the reason you should get this. Damn, Halo 1 and 3 were such really huge
They're
system
essentially
sellers.
the Breath of the Wild.
They really were. Obviously, we talked about Master Chief being like such a at a glance a Doom guy,
First look,
and being the and being a poster boy and just being whatever. But then he's literally become the icon of Microsoft.
Yeah.
In the same way that
like not only that, Microsoft's Siri is Cortana.
Yeah.
Like that's how far it's ascended.
I had to explain to my dad what Cortana was.
Good luck with that.
He said who's Cortana? I said, oh, she's from a video game now. She's on your computer. What are your thoughts on the impacts? Obviously, you're like the demographic. You just got absolutely really engrossed with this series and like not only just liked the game as as just a fun thing to do, but you enjoyed the mechanics of it and you enjoyed so you've clearly enjoyed the single player, the characters, and the multiplayer aspect to you. So now that we've reached the point where Halo is not as mainstream anymore, now that the first person shooter genre like obviously exploded because of it, where would you say Halo's biggest influence on the gaming world is? Like where would you put it in that timeline of like amazing games?
See, this is really hard because you say I'm the demographic, but I am the biased demographic. I am the absolute epitome of that. So obviously I'd put it at number one. But if I took that hat off for a second, I think
number one.
Yeah. maybe two. I'd put, for me, id and the stuff that Valve did are above Halo. But Halo is not far off that for me. For Bungie Halo, I have to say.
Bungie Halo. You can't say we don't talk about the other kind of Halo. It's a shame that it is past its zenith now, but I think with the reputation that it's built and the universe that it's built, and obviously the fans it's cultivated and what it's done for the first person console shooter genre, which obviously was like the most popular genre flat out for a good 5 or 6 years. It can be traced back to this, and I'm happy to put this in the lineage of your Wolfenstein 3Ds, Dooms, Quakes, GoldenEye, Halo. How do you feel about it?
Halo is life. Halo is life. Pretty much.
So, thanks for watching our thoughts on Halo, guys. As always, we always appreciate hearing from you. So if you have any thoughts about like the video or how you feel about the Halo series in general, like feel free to comment on the box below. We do check through to see if anyone's left us some feedback. And if you've enjoyed the content today, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for future updates. We've got our Let's Talk Video Games series, which this video is a part of. We've also got another series called Let's Talk Comics, where we discuss comics-related media and influences. And we've also started a new series, which is Classic Gaming, where me and Zach take a look back at a classic game and have a first look at it and see how it hands up.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.